We talked a while back. Now I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? About man being so horrible to man. And we're going to see that here happening, and we're already beginning to see it. Oh, a while back, remember we talked about the fact that like in New York, where a lot of this is taking root, their crime is so bad they had to bring in the National Guard to guard the subway. Even though there's a 4,000-man police department that does that. They can't do it. They had to bring in the National Guard. And yet nobody there wakes up and says, maybe we should undo what we've been doing because things are getting much, much worse. Now, the only good part is it's causing lots of New Yorkers to vote for Donald Trump. I don't know if you saw the rally they had there, and it was funny because they tried to say, oh, well, none of those were actual people.
That's me, I'm sorry.
Oh, none of those people are from the Bronx. Well, then I saw other videos that they were all from the Bronx. They're like, lived here my whole life, that kind of stuff. And one guy even goes, I'm a Democrat. And who are you voting for? Trump. But it's because it's so bad, So that's just the leading edge. Now imagine that multiplied times 1,000 or more. Where man is released, think of any time in history, any natural disaster in the United States or anywhere else, when law and order breaks down, what happens? Everybody gets together, sings Kumbaya, holds hands, and helps each other? No. Looting, raping, murder, theft, violence, destruction. That's what happens. So when somebody tries to tell you the heart of man is basically good, it's pretty easy to say, nah, nope, can prove it. Watch what happens when all constraints are removed. Things don't get better, they get 1,000 times worse, So, because there's a lot of people that are law-abiding only because there's laws. You take those laws away, that's all gone. They're going to do whatever they want. So we're going to see that here when we get down to the end of this. So we're finally back in Revelation after making our way through the 5 parts of what's coming up prior to this, I think. So also always remember, and I'll repeat this over and over, that a whole huge chunk of when we study Revelation, we have to extrapolate, interpolate, things of that nature, because it's not super clear. It's very clear on what's going to happen. What's not clear is the timing and exactly how it's going to happen. If you take it as a whole, it's just like, there's going to be horrific destruction and death. That's what's going to happen. And in the end, the world's going to be just a giant mess. And then Jesus comes, cleans it up, turns it back like it was before the flood, and we go on with the 1,000-year reign. So, we left off way back then with the worship service in heaven. That was the end of chapter 5. Remember, there's this huge worship service in heaven that starts at the throne. The cherubim praise God, then the elders praise God, then the rest of us praise God, then the angels praise God, then all of creation, and each one just adds more volume until it's beyond probably our ability to comprehend the volume that would be coming out. We're talking about every part of creation now, from the highest, the archangels, the creatures around the throne, to the lowest of animals, like cats and things like that are the lowest on the scale out there in the world. So I can't, I always have to dig it into cats every once in a while, We have a dog that's half cat. As far as we can tell. He's a weird terrier mix that Leah has. He is so funny, though. He does so many things that are the same as a cat. So he'll pounce on things and grab them with his front paws. You're looking at him, I thought you were a dog. He's amazing. All right, so right now, John's perspective is in heaven. Remember, he was moved up into heaven, up into the area of the temple, and he's looking from that perspective. Pretty soon, he's going to be back looking down on earth and that type of thing. So let's see. Let me real quickly, before we get into these judgments, I want to make sure everybody understands, because I find this to be one of the things that confuses people the most, that the Antichrist and the beast are the same human body. 2 different beings. He starts out as the Antichrist, a man from the east. That's all the Bible tells us, meaning east of Israel. So that's Asia, somewhere like that. Or could be up in northern Russia, that kind of thing. Someone from the east in a time of great calamity, worldwide catastrophe, steps out of the shadows into the limelight and has a plan. A plan for peace, a plan for order, and a plan to get the world functioning again. Now, most of us who believe in the rapture believe it's the rapture that causes the worldwide catastrophe. Okay, and we'll get to that in a minute. And so he steps forward, and he's a man of kindness and peace and charisma and seemingly integrity, and he just wants everybody to be safe. And he's got the plan. He brings the world back into order out of chaos. So everybody basically hands him authority. He doesn't have to take it. In the middle, at the 3.5-year mark, it's an extremely important mark, everything changes. At 3.5 years, he appears to receive a fatal wound, like an assassination, something like that. It doesn't tell us, it just says a fatal wound. But the Bible says appears, because he's not really dead. He just looks dead. And then he miraculously returns from the dead, comes back to life. Now, who's he mimicking? Exactly. This is Satan's son, as Jesus was God's son, and he's trying to mimic what God did. But that makes everybody think he is supernatural, because he comes back to life. But when he comes back, he's now the beast. He's not the Antichrist anymore. He's now the man who's going to rule the world as a dictator. He's going to shut down he's going to start a one-world religion in the first 3.5 years that everybody becomes a part of. Let's unify. How many times have you heard that? If we unify all the religions, it'll stop so much war. And it's like, really? There's very, very little war that's been motivated by religion. Ethnic cleansing, sure. Stuff that the Islamists do, absolutely. Outside of that, not a whole lot. It's for territory, money, power, but not that often for religion. But anyway, so he does. It's going to have to be something like New Age, because New Age will accept every belief except the three monotheists. The Christianity, Islam, Judaism. Those three, not a part of it. And yet he makes a treaty with Israel up in the front beginning, and I think they're left alone to do their own thing. They don't necessarily have to be a part of it. And then, though, at the 3.5-year mark, when he comes back to life, he does away with that religion. This new false prophet steps forward that's his prophet, and everybody's to treat him as God. And now he's to be worshipped, and he puts a statue in the temple, and he sits in the temple as though he's God, and now he's a murdering, killing despot. So it's two different beings, and the difference is in the beginning, it's a man who's empowered by Satan, but not totally possessed. But after the death and he comes to life, now he is absolutely Satan in human form, basically. Totally possessed. And that's what causes the big change in personality and all of that he does. And the Bible uses both those names. In the beginning is the Antichrist. You get past the middle, he's the beast. He's also the little horn in Daniel and other places. He also hates God, and once he becomes the beast, he begins speaking directly against God and blaspheming God, and basically telling the world he has more power than God. Because we'll find in the beginning of Revelation, the world knows it's God bringing all the judgments. And so they understand this battle between these two. It's not a battle, because God's not really fully doing anything yet. He's allowing it, but that's how it's perceived. Let's see. So the beast is a horrible, bloodthirsty, power-mad human who forces the entire world to worship him. He is a total dictator. He kills anyone who won't bow down to him. You don't bow to him, he kills you. And he can call down fire. His false prophet can call down fire from heaven and do all kinds of supernatural things. And that's why I warn you all the time. Do not ever get caught up with supernatural gifts and powers as though they're always pointing towards God. Satan can mimic every miracle except resurrection. He can mimic every miracle. Health, all of that, except resurrection. He does mimic it, but by cheating, because the guy's not actually dead. And we know that even right now today, you can go to a doctor, they can give you some medications, and you'll look dead. And to every person that comes up and tries to find out if you're alive, it'll look like you're not breathing and your heart's not beating. It's just so low and so slow it can't be detected, but you're still alive. In fact, there are Asian gurus who can do that with their minds. They can slow their body functions down so low, they almost go into like a state of hibernation. So it's not that difficult to do. Okay, now, the rapture. That's the next thing that happens is we just went through all the stuff that I think is going to occur before, probably right before, the Psalm 83 war, Ezekiel 38, 39, and then the rapture. Could be a different order. Those two wars could happen in the very beginning. It's hard to say. But what we're seeing now, I'm kind of starting to think it's going to happen very near. This battle with Hamas and stuff, and the anti-Semitism across the world. That's all unique stuff. Now, those of us who believe in the rapture see this global event that will cause chaos. Because if you think about it, all the Christians disappearing all at the same time, all over the world. That's airline pilots, truck drivers, bus drivers, captains of ships, police, doctors, emergency people. All of those critical jobs around the country. People were guys who were sitting in control rooms operating critical functions, like power plants and things of that nature. They all disappear at once. Boom, gone. So imagine the mass hysteria, the fear. What do people do when they're afraid? When there's like that kind of mass hysteria, we just kind of talked to, are they always nice to each other and help each other? What does mass hysteria usually cause? Violence, death. Absolutely. People will be starving. Think of it. All of our transportation systems will be in chaos. Ships, planes, trucks, all of that kind of stuff. And most homes carry no more than 3 days worth of food. Most stores now no longer have anything in the back. They might have 1 day's worth. So the rule of thumb in our world today is 3 days, everybody's out of food. 3 days. When people get to hungry and thirsty, guess what? They start killing and stealing. So that's going to be a part of it as well. And now you have less policemen to deal with it. Less military to deal with it. A lot of your first responders are gone. And all this chaos, planes crashing, cars crashing, buses crashing, all of that. Larry?
I'm also thinking that many non-believers, something like this happens, they're non-believers, but they're going to start praying.
Well, absolutely. That's one of the big things is that what Larry said was he thinks a lot of non-believers are going to start believing, basically. And that's going to happen. People that either think they're Christians and they're not, and they get left behind and they're totally surprised, or people like my son who was raised in a Christian home but abandoned all that. If we all disappear, guess what he's immediately going to know? Oh, rats. Dad was right. Mom was right. I better get this fixed. And that's where a lot of your original conversions are going to come from. There's people all over this world that have contact with Christians that don't want any part of it, but suddenly will start believing it when we all disappear. And the only thing we have in common, black, white, brown, Asian, Russian, only thing in common, we're Christians. That's it. So it's going to be interesting to see how the world tries to explain it away, that it's not the rapture in the Bible. Aliens, I don't know what's going to be the thing, nuclear release or something, Although what you're seeing now is the media can convince people of anything. So that's what'll happen then. What I learned the most about who runs our country was in Y2K. Remember that way back 24 years ago? That's where I learned it is not religion, it is not politics, it is the media that controls what the people in America believe. And now it's the internet, even more so, which is a form of media. But see, like Y2K, those of us who worked in the control industry went around to anybody that would listen and said, nothing's going to happen. Just think about it. All those processes out there do not care the day, the time, they don't care. They care temperature, pressure, flow, that kind of thing. Won't bother them in the least. And yet what the media say, we're all going to die. We're all going to have no power. We're going to have no water, no food. And then it came and what happened? But the next time the media said it's going to be horrible, what did everybody do? COVID! Everybody bought it again. You're like, now wait a minute. You didn't learn this the first time around? But yet, here we are. And it just shows you the media and now the internet has enormous power to make people believe whatever they want. I don't know, most people don't realize it's why our government is so anti-TikTok. The TikTok system that's on the internet, because it's controlled by China. They also control then what gets the most likes and all that. You don't know it. You think everybody's liking it, but they're putting it up front and they can control what America believes. That's the whole point. It's got two sides. Control what we believe by controlling the narrative and also stealing all the information that they can get by using that system. And I'm amazed that there are Americans fighting we're trying to ban it. Our government is trying to ban it. They even already passed the ruling that said you either sell the company to an American company or you get out of America. Because the big problem now is it's owned by China. And yet there's all these Americans that are standing up for it, and you're like, you're about as dumb as they come if you really don't understand what's going on here. Calvin?
Every time
Oh, I know. That's where they're smart. They're getting all the youth. And most of the youth, it's the only app they use. TikTok and maybe Snapchat. They don't use Facebook anymore. That's all old stuff. And that's it. And TikTok is, yep. So we're going to have people starving, killing each other, chaos, war. I mean, imagine. If there's all this chaos and we've got all these issues with ethnic cleansing in places like Serbia, Croatia, what do you think they're going to do when the whole world's in chaos? That's a great time to wipe out the people you want to get rid of because nobody will really know what's going on. So that'll be happening too. And the tribulation hasn't even begun yet. So imagine what it's going to be like. It's going to get 1,000 times worse than what's already going to be happening. Now, also think of this. Who would China blame for the chaos in their country? Who do they blame now? Us. So you know what? It's highly likely that they could very possibly release a nuclear first strike. Very possible. Russia too. Because they're going to blame us, the great enemy, that type of thing. I'm not saying it'll happen. What I'm saying is it could happen to add to the mess that's going on. And that's why we believe in the tribulation, the rapture, because we want to be gone from here. We're hoping and praying there's a rapture, because we want to be out. So, all right. Now, in the midst of all of this Antichrist, this man, he'll step out of the shadows, and the world will hand him power, and we'll see that in the first horseman, and he will bring the world back into order and a semblance of peace. It doesn't mean there'll be no war anywhere, but on the whole, the world will be relatively at peace. There still will be some wars going on. Okay? All right, and this is also where we left off, was with the 7 seals of Revelation. Remember? The Lamb stepped up to the throne. God hands him the scroll, 7 seals. That scroll is the title to the earth. Jesus is taking back his possession from Satan. That's also why he's going to reshape it to how it was pre-flood, before sin screwed it all up. He's going to make it like that during his millennial reign. That's part of what happens during the tribulation. A lot of reforming of the earth occurs during that time. So, also we'll see in Revelation 6:2 in just a minute that it tells us that a crown is given to this ruler. He doesn't have to take it. It's given to him. Okay? So, he's going to begin opening the seals, and this is what the 7 seals contain. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, as we call them. White horse, red horse, black horse, pale horse. These all have to do with war, famine, disease, pestilence, all of that. Then, souls crying out, we'll get to that in just a minute. That is all of the Christians killed during the tribulation. Their souls are under the incense altar, and they're crying out to God, how long till you avenge us? Basically, how long are you going to let this go on? All right? And then, the 6th one, there's a massive earthquake, the sun is blocked, the moon is blood red, and stars fall from the sky. Okay? And then on the 7th, total silence in heaven. And you'll find that the 7th seal, the 7th trumpet, and the 7th bowl, each one of those ushers in the next set. Some of them have events that occur during them, but their main issue of the 7th one is to bring in the next. So this one contains the 7 bowl judgments. And trumpet judgments, and actually the 7 bowl judgments as well, because then we do the 7 trumpet judgments, and the 7th trumpet judgment brings in the 7 bowl judgments. The 7th bowl judgment brings in the great white throne. The second coming of Christ, sorry. The great white throne is not till the end of the millennial kingdom. Brings in the great white throne, the second coming of Christ. I'm still saying it wrong. Okay, then I like to give you kind of an overview before we get into the individual ones, so you kind of understand what's happening here.
So basically, it could happen in different ways, not exactly secession.
No. What do you mean? This is the order that they'll occur in.
Right. But what I'm saying is, what I really want to say is, how long will Christians suffer, and how deeply will they suffer before the rapture?
Oh, that we don't know. Because we believe the rapture takes us out before the tribulation. Right. He's asked me how long and how deep will the suffering for Christians be. We don't really know, because we believe the rapture will take us out. And actually, that's what begins the tribulation, is our removal. Okay? And now, during the tribulation, there'll be tremendous suffering on the part of Christians. They'll be hunted down and killed anywhere they're found. You can't let anybody know, or you'll be hunted down and killed. Oh, absolutely. And then after the 3.5 years, remember, that's when we get the mark of the beast. And this mark is visible to everyone. And if you don't have it, they know you're not part of the group. And you get hunted down and killed. But what is the best thing that can happen to a Christian during the tribulation? To be killed. Absolutely. Because you get out. Like I said before, if they're like having some mass guillotining, we should like, hello, I want to be first in line. Get out of my way because I want out of here. I know what's coming. Kind of thing. So, okay. So, where am I? Okay, now the last days, they kind of come in 3 parts. There's the part that we're living in now, which is where we'll have the false Christs. Most of you guys don't know this, but there's been a lot of people in history that have popped up and said they're Jesus. And they're here, to take their people home. Heck, in Sedona, we had a guy that would show up in your church on Sunday morning and tell you he was Jesus and he needed your pulpit to talk to the people. Well, the crazy part was he thought we'd actually do it. Nonetheless, earthquakes, war, famine, pestilence, and death. Which outside of the earthquakes, when you think about it, war causes all the others. Famine, pestilence, and death. They're all connected. And then the second part will be what we call the Great Tribulation. Of course, we think the rapture will occur before that. And then the third part is what we call the millennial reign of Christ. When Christ returns at his second coming, he will kill every unsaved human on the earth. Not one single unsaved person will survive to go into the 1,000-year reign. Then he begins his millennial reign, his 1,000-year reign. And to me, the absolute most surprising part of that is that by the end of the 1,000 years of total peace, righteousness, justice, fairness, there's only one belief system, Jesus, and he's right there in the temple. There is no faith. More people will reject Christ than accept Christ, and there will be an enormous army in the billions, if not trillions, who will attack Jerusalem and Jesus. That's what I find so amazing. But that is one of the major points of the whole thing, is to prove that there is no outside force that causes man to sin. Because that's what we always say. It was my parents. It was the drugs. We always blame it on something else. It's society. It's us. We're the problem. And think about it. The earth is fine until we do what? Introduce humans, and then what? It turns into a mess. We pollute and destroy and kill and all that stuff. Humans are the only animals that will kill 10 times more than they can eat. Very few. There's a few, but not many. Like I've known guys that would go to the Salt River back in the days when it had water and fish. And I think you're going to find out why it doesn't have much fish. And they would catch not the squawfish. What's the other Arizona indigenous species? It's a squawfish and there's another one. They get 5 feet long and 100 pounds. And I knew a guy in Tucson, I knew him in his 80s, that would go up there. They would lay a huge tarp on the ground, him and 4 or 5 other guys. They would fill it 3 feet deep with fish. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fish. Hundreds and hundreds. Can you eat all that? Mm-mm. And when you've got hundreds of people doing that, pretty soon what happens? What you have today, almost no fish. Absolutely. Only humans do that. Animals kill what they can eat and they move on. Except weasels. Did you know weasels are one of the few animals that kill for fun? Like if a weasel gets into a chicken pen, it won't just kill a chicken and eat it. It kills all the chickens. Every single one of them. Yep. And it's one of the only animals that does that. So, besides humans. Okay, now, part 1 that we just talked about, these events have already begun. They will get stronger and more frequent. Jesus said they're like the birth pains of a woman. They will come closer together, faster, and more violent. And what do we see happening in the world around us?
It's happening.
Yeah, more wars, more violence, and it's happening faster and faster. In fact, our generation is the only generation where the entire world can change in a matter of days or weeks. It used to take years and years and years to bring a global change. It can happen rapidly through the internet now. So, now we got the 4 horsemen as they're called. The first, chapter 6, verse 1. Now I watched when the Lamb opened one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures, that's the cherubim around the throne with the faces and wings and eyes, say with a voice like thunder, "Come!" And I looked, and behold, the white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. So we know absolutely who this person is. They're a conqueror. But they're very interesting. And the fact that he's got a bow, what does he not have? Arrows, no ammo. So it means he has the ability to use weaponry, but he doesn't need to. He can conquer without it, but he does have it. And if you've ever read the Left Behind series of books, that's what they do in there when they start getting into this is not only does this guy bring a plan of peace, but he gets the whole world to sign all of their nuclear weapons over to him so that he has control so nobody can shoot each other. But then guess what? At the 3.5 mark, when he's no longer the nice guy, who has all the weapons? He does. Absolutely. So, now there are those who believe this is Jesus. They're out of their minds, to be quite honest. The Bible is very clear about things. Number one, who said come? Drew this man out and gave him his orders. This man on the white horse? One of the cherubim. Is there any cherubim in heaven that would give Jesus an order? They wouldn't even think about it. I mean, it would be the thing that would just, they'd be scared to death and wouldn't even think about giving him an order, telling him what to do. No way. And he's not a conqueror with a bow and no arrows. Does Jesus need a bow? No, he does not. When he comes back to earth and he kills everybody, how does he do it? He speaks, and they dissolve. That's it. He stops holding their atoms together. That's basically what happens. And they come apart, and they're no longer there. Because the Bible describes them as melting. Then that would be a great example of that. Just disappearing. If you ever watched any of the Marvel movies, there's one where a guy gets this glove with all these stones in it, and by snapping his fingers, he can kill 50% of the population of the entire universe, because he's convinced there's just too many beings. And so then they all just kind of turn into ash. And that's kind of the picture that the Bible describes, is disappearing. So he doesn't need any of that. So what is this? This is the Antichrist. This is the conqueror. He steps forward in the very beginning and brings peace and order out of chaos and destruction. Okay? He has a bow but no arrows. He has a crown. How did he get the crown? Given to him. He didn't take it. It's given to him, hence why he doesn't need the arrows. Given to him. Michael?
Is this peace all over?
What's that?
Is this a worldwide peace?
Relatively, yes.
Not just
Michael asked if it's worldwide peace. And yes, there will still be pockets where there will be rebellions and fights, but generally the world will be out of chaos and back functioning again and be at some level of peace. Let's see. And also you'll find where it says, there's another part of Revelation that connects to this, much farther down. But you will find after we get past the 3.5 year mark and he's the beast, it'll tell us that the earth is divided into 10 regions, each region having its own ruler. And then it tells us that they all give their authority to the beast, for that is what they were created to do. So God even made them to do that. So what we're going to find is somewhere in the near future, the world is going to be divided into what I think are 10 economic zones. Not kingdoms like we've known them in the past, because that's going away. The young people are very globalist. They're very anti-nationalist, if you've noticed. And that's by design. And so what we're going to see is the world's going to be broken into 10 economic zones. And each economic zone will have something like our Fed bank, like a head bank, and someone that runs the bank and that person runs the economy of that zone. Okay? And then there'll be one overall ruler that does the political part of it. And then eventually they're going to hand all their authority to him so that he's a total dictator. See, in the beginning it looks like, oh yeah, we've got a 10-man group. It's got to be done by consensus, very similar to like a parliament or something like that. But that all changes in the middle and he becomes a dictator and they literally just hand him their power. No battle, no fighting, no none of that. Michael?
Okay, so you've studied this for quite a while, so you have a feeling, any feelings about this could happen like really fast?
Michael said, could this happen really fast? It will happen very quickly. Yes. If you think about it, if the rapture is what starts it, the rapture occurs in seconds. We're gone. We're here, then we're gone. And then there's chaos all over the world, and that will last for a while, months probably. But then the events after that, the Bible says, and as you look, we got 22 chapters of Revelation. That all occurs in 7 years. So it occurs very rapidly. In fact, these judgments, as you see them, the Bible doesn't tell us exactly, although it gives us an order. Some of them could happen simultaneously, but in most cases, it really seems like one's going to happen, and just as it ends, the next one, and there's never a break. It's just bad, 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 worse, 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 until Jesus comes back, kind of thing. So, let's see. Now then, it says he can conquer without war. So that's a good question. How can he conquer? How does he get control of the world? Yes, the world hands him power, but how? How does he do this? Is everybody going to agree with him ruling the world? No. So how does he do it? Well, we're told how he does it. The Bible's always good about that. If we pay attention and if we know the whole book. See, that's the important part. Too much in the church today, we know certain books really well, and there's lots of books we don't know anything about. And the point is, we need to do, I think about it, how many sermons or Bible study lessons have you been to on Old Testament? Not many. Not many. Because we always teach out of it, but there's tons of stuff in the Old Testament we need to know. And there's answers in those scriptures, but they're all in different, like the Psalm 83 war. That's not in a prophetic book. That's where you'd think it would be. It's a prophecy. But you got to read Psalms to find that. And I don't like Psalms. So it was hard for me. I don't like Psalms because it's poetry. And I don't like poetry because I don't understand it. To me, poetry is taking 1,000 words to what you could say with 3. The sky is blue. That's all we need. I don't even need that. The sky is there. So, here we go. Here's where we find out. Down in chapter 13 of Revelation, verse 16. That's a statue of himself that he puts in the temple that actually begins to speak. And it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is the name of the beast or the number of its name. Okay, so how does he do it? Well, how does he get the control? Control and access code that you must have to access the internet. We're told what the number is. What is it? Everybody's aware of it. Even non-Christians know it. 666, absolutely. So, all they have to do is give him control of the internet. And you can control the internet. They do it in China and other places. He gets control of the internet, and then he says, okay, if you don't have the 666 access code, you don't get on. If you don't get on, you don't buy, you don't sell, you don't work. You are completely locked out of the entire global economic system. Calvin?
Did you also know that saved is something most people's favorite number is 6? Their
well,
lucky number is 6.
6? Well, the number of man in the Bible is 6. That's why it's 666. Man, man, man. Trinity, 3, all that stuff, Michael?
So say that you say that happens next week, right?
Okay.
So you can't buy anything, you can't sell anything, right? So how do you survive without eating?
Well, the Christians, I got one too far there. The Christians, yeah, basically it is. Let me see if I can get this. I think I did it again. I think that's automatic. Because I'm not looking at my notes, and that makes it go one too far. Nope, there it is. Okay. No, what Michael asked, well, Calvin said that 6 is most people's favorite number, and then what Michael said was that how are you going to function if you're locked out of the economic system? Well, all the Christians on the earth are going to have to create a secondary economic system. Today we call that the black market, the dark web. Isn't it funny? That's where we're going. That's where all the crime is today. But that's what Christians will have to do, is they'll have to basically be very, very underground, very secret, because the minute they find out you're a Christian, you're dead. It's that simple. Even though we would think that most Christians would volunteer to get killed, the thing is they have an impetus to go out and try to bring others into the kingdom, even as dangerous as it is. And that's why God keeps them here, to help with that. So really it's not that hard. You could do it today. You could take over the world today if you could gain control of the internet. Because most people don't realize it, but almost every single business in the world now is not just on the internet, they are dependent on the internet to do business. You shut the internet down, you shut all the businesses down, everywhere. Transportation, manufacturing, it doesn't matter. Power, all of those control systems that they were worried about during Y2K, they shut the internet down, then that is going to be a problem. Things are going to get out of hand because a lot of that information, control information, goes back and forth across the internet. You sever that, you're not controlling that anymore. It goes crazy and things start blowing up and all kinds of stuff. Larry?
These are the Christians that these are the individuals that become Christians after the rapture.
After the rapture, yes, of which there will be billions. So yes, absolutely. It's Christians are the people who get saved after the rapture. And with the rapture, there will be an enormous number probably. I would guess that millions, if not tens of millions, might get saved just right after the rapture because they know what happened. You know, and you can't say anymore, well, I don't really think that's true. It's like it's in your face. It's absolutely true. So we could get a lot there. But you'll be completely locked out of the economic system. And most people don't, I think, ever think about the fact that if you really want to take over a country, that's how you do it. You can do it through war, but you end up destroying everything. Think of what Europe and Germany were like after the war. The factories were all destroyed. The homes were destroyed. If it wasn't for America and our money, they'd have been horribly, they'd have never rebuilt, or they'd have taken them forever. Japan, you know what, the best thing that ever happened in Japan was war with the United States. Because what we did was we went there and sent all of our manufacturing experts, and we built them the most modern, most advanced factories on the planet at that period of time in the world. I don't know if you've ever seen it. You want to see a movie that it's kind of funny. It's a Monty Python movie, and I'm not a big fan of Monty Python. It's called The Mouse That Roared. It's a guy that's the king of a country that has like 40 people. His army is 6 guys with medieval weapons, axes and swords, but they live in the 20th century. And he figures out that every country that's ever gone to war with America ended up much richer and much better off afterwards, because after we beat you, we give you all this money. So he and 6 guys try to attack America, but they can't get America to fight back. They like appear in New York City, walking down the street with their weapons, trying to find somebody to fight so they'll rebuild their country for them. But it's funny, but it's only because it reflects something that's real, you know. But so think of it, all this, you know. So you don't want to use war. The stuff you want is what gets destroyed. You want the money, the manufacturing, and all that stuff. If you take over the economic system, you've got it. You can starve anyone into submission. You can stop any water, any gas, any electricity, anything. You've got total control. You can make the entire world do whatever you want. That's it. All you have to do is get control of the internet. The funny thing is, you can ask Debbie, when the very first ATMs came out, and the very first time you could use a card to buy gas, do you remember that was the first place you could use a credit card without going and paying for it, was at gas pumps? That's when I was, 30 years old. And I made the prediction then. I said, this is going to expand across the world, and the internet didn't exist really yet, not fully, and it's going to take over, and this is how the Antichrist will take over the world. Because you can just see it. It's inescapable. You know, it's efficient, it's easy, it's convenient. When you give those 3 things to humans, they go after it with everything they've got. And that's why we see it expanding like it is. And do you think we're going to get less dependent or more dependent on the internet? Yeah, more. In fact, that's what the whole world is doing now, trying desperately to get the internet to every part of the world with high-speed internet, you know. So we're going to see that happen, and that's how he's going to take over. And then at the 3.5, see, everything's fine till the 3.5 year mark. That's when he comes out with the access code. Okay, now that I got you all, you don't have this code, you don't work. You don't buy, you don't sell, you don't eat, you don't have water. None of that. Okay, we'll see how far we get here. We've only got a few minutes. I just threw that up there to say this is the chaos. This is what it'll be like on Earth. But I couldn't find anything with modern people. Only the old-time painters painted any pictures about this kind of thing. So, the second beast that comes out is in verses 3 and 4. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." And out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. So the first one brings the world back under control, gets everything up and working again, but then there's going to be people that they don't agree with this. They don't like the fact that you took everything over, and they're going to begin to fight back. Right from the beginning, but it won't be worldwide war, but it will be war in different places. And again, we don't know how this red horse could even be describing this entire 7-year period, because there's going to be war of some kind during this entire period, pretty much. Okay? He's called war. And he has a great sword, and he has ability to take peace from the earth. Okay? What God is doing here is this man brings the world to peace, and then God's like, oh yeah, well watch this. I can undo it very easily, and that's what comes next. To prove he really doesn't have the power he says he has. Because he can't stop this. And if you go look at the book, chapter 11 of Daniel, it describes in great detail a lot of the wars and battles that are going to occur during this time. Okay, let's see. What is the inevitable result of war besides death? Famine. Because what does war do to infrastructure? It destroys it. What does it do to crops? It destroys them. And it also depends on if the people being attacked take what's called the scorched earth policy. That's where you destroy everything behind you as you run from the enemy, so they have no food, no water, no nothing. But you also destroy all your own crops. So it's famine. So think of this chaos and this war and this killing. A big outcome of that's going to be famine. And that takes us right into the third horse. Okay? And he is famine. Revelation 6, 5, and 6. When he opened the third seal, I heard the living creature say, come. The third living creature say, you notice each one of the four cherubim, each one has one horse that they call forth. Come. And I looked, and behold, a black horse. And its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, a quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine. And what this is referring to, this next horse that comes out, is that famine, caused not only by war, but also environmental judgments from God. Famine is going to exist during almost the entire 7 years. Because think of it, as we go through this, God's going to destroy a third of the grass, a third of the green trees, a third of the fresh water. The sun's going to get so hot it burns everybody. What's that going to do to the plants? And on it goes. And all the transportation systems will be in a mess, especially when the ocean is turned a third into blood. So there's going to be worldwide famine as well. And also war brings disease. Dead bodies laying everywhere. And comes out of that, okay? Well, that's what I told you. Billions upon billions die during this time for various reasons. Now, we got just a minute. I want to tell you one more. A denarius, notice it said you get a quart of wheat or 3 quarts of barley for 1 denarius. All right, that is, this whole point is those scales and this being, that is all speaking to famine. A famine like in a city that was under siege in ancient times. And pretty soon the food starts running out. So then food gets more and more and more expensive as you go, and then it gets rationed. And the reason it's 1 quart and 3 quarts is because wheat has far more nutrients and calories than barley does. Barley is an inferior grain. So for the same money, you get 1 quart of wheat. That was enough for one adult for 1 day to keep you alive and give you the energy to work. 3 quarts of barley was the same. But the person who bought 3 quarts of barley is a person with a family. And you're feeding them that. That's starvation food. It'll keep you alive, but you're going to steadily lose weight and energy and ability because it doesn't have enough calories in it to keep you alive. Also, that's a 1,200% increase of cost for that food. In their day, when this was written, in John's day, a denarius was the wage, a full day's wage for a worker. So it would take your entire day's pay to you to buy 1 quart of wheat to try to keep yourself alive. Now, that doesn't count things like clothes, housing, anything else. That's just your food. And that's it. And this is worldwide.
So what's the good news?
There isn't any. God is in control. That's the only good news. And that you can be saved during this time. And that a lot of these punishments don't happen to God's children. Some do, but a lot don't. The last 6 pretty much happen specifically to the non-Christians during that time. Let's see. Now, the scales symbolize the fact that you're very carefully measuring and rationing food supplies, like down to the grain, of what you're getting, because it's limited. And also, who gets the food when it becomes very scarce? Rich people or poor people? Yeah, rich people, absolutely. Poor people going to be in a world of hurt. Then it says, do not harm the oil and wine. And as far as I can find out, I don't believe there's any scholar that knows what that means exactly. It just means that something's going to happen that's going to destroy the food supplies, but oil and wine seem to be, they'll be okay during this time. Now, it could be the fact that vines and trees are a lot tougher, it can handle more drought and stuff than grains can. You know, all a grain has to get is a short period of drought, you're done, it doesn't produce. But olive trees and vineyards, especially if they're mature, are different. Plus, they tend to be irrigated in a lot of places, different things. But it just says that they'll have oil and wine, but they won't have much in the way of other food. Also, oil and wine was a major staple in the first century type of thing. So, and if you were poor, you probably had wine, but it wasn't really very good wine. It was mainly just alcohol, and you would mix it with water only to keep the water from killing you, because their water was full of parasites and things of that nature. That's why you'll hear them talk about mixed wine. Usually what they did was they took a pitcher of water, just poured an ounce or two of wine in it. Not enough to affect you in any way, but it would kill off the parasites, germs, and whatnot that are in their water. And then it would be safe to drink. All right, we're out of time. So let's